Kickoff is 7:50 officially. 7:50 this weekend at Boise State. One was trying to do something. They've only done one. That was in 2015. Don't know if Holly Holmes fighting this weekend. That'd be great if she was.
She retired.
But this is Coach Eck's. He's coached a lot of games in the state of Idaho. This will be your first game. Is your first game coaching there?
As a head coach. I coached there as an assistant twice.
Not sure. But Idaho. All right. So with that opening statement, any questions?
Excited to play a good Boise State game. It was a disappointing loss against San Jose State, but it's certainly a game that we can learn from, and how you have to play very well on the road when you're playing a very good team like San Jose State. And I think we will grow from that. And we got to have a great week of preparation this week to get ready for an outstanding Boise State team. Again, they're 3-2, but their losses at Notre Dame and then at South Florida. South Florida was good enough to beat Florida on the road, so they're a very good team. They've been the standard, I think, in the Mountain West for the past 20 years, and really they've been the standard probably in all of Group of 5 football over the last 20 years. So this will be a great measuring stick, and I'm hopeful that we'll have a great week and play a lot better than we did last week and be able to compete well with these guys.
What are you seeing out of Boise on both sides of the ball?
Their defense really stands out to me. I think they're very, very good in the back end. I mean, that's a pretty elite, Group of 5 secondary. Big and physical and fast at safety. They will come down and tackle. Very good in man coverage. I think you watch the Notre Dame game, and it's a lot of really covered well receivers, making just nice catches. It wasn't bad coverage. Seven has some amazing breaks in the ball. McCoy, you see him. He had a great pick six against App State, where it's probably as good of a break as I've seen all year. I think their D line is good. Feely really stands out to me. He's very active at 3 technique. I think number 5, Jaden Virgin Morgan's very good at the end. Offensively, I think they still have the Boise identity, is that they want to, run the ball to set up, passing game and things like that. I think that you really see that the teams, if they've ran for 150 yards or more, they're 3-0, and then both the times they've lost, they've been around the 100-yard mark. So I think that certainly stopping their offense, I think starts with that. But I think they're good in the O-line, good tight ends. I think they're very good in the kicking game as well. Their punter's got great get-off times. Their kickoff guy kicks touchbacks every time. So this will be a good challenge.
And you kind of touched on it earlier too. I know you guys don't need much more motivation, but only beating them once in program history, is that something that you bring up to the team this week and kind of use as a point of motivation?
Not a bunch. It's kind of a goofy matchup that way. We got so many new players who've never played against them before. We have I think I asked the guys to raise their hand because we didn't play them last year. We don't have many guys left from the 23 team. It's probably less than 10 guys who are left from the 23 team who were on that trip. And then you have, we're not going to play them again after this year. So in some ways, this is almost just like, more in the file with like a Michigan or UCLA game. You're kind of going to play in an iconic venue, and it's a one-time shot against them.
I guess on that note, since you already have those games against Michigan and UCLA, is there even an intimidation factor hanging over play on the turf, play against the top team in the Mountain West for the last 20 years?
I think this is an intimidating venue. I think they have a very good crowd, but I think certainly playing at Michigan is good practice for something like this, because it'll be, their fans will be into it. We're going to use crowd noise all this week to get ready for it and be ready for the noise. But I think, again, we've had other games with noise, so I think that it'll certainly be louder than it was at the Rose Bowl.
And Coach, obviously head coach at Idaho for the past couple of years. And is this going to be your first time returning to Idaho?
For a game, it took us a few months to get, my family back and forth. So, I went back probably spring break, March of last year and things to Idaho. But, family moved out at the end of March, so I haven't been back since then.
And is there any update on the injured UNM Lobos? Murphy, Johnson, Abe?
We're still waiting on a few guys. I think we'll know more Thursday when the availability report comes out with things. We got a few guys who are nicked up and might be limited today, and we'll know about. I think Clint Stevens has been officially ruled out. But I believe he's the only guy who's been officially ruled out at this point.
Five games into the year, what is the culture of the team, would you say, so far?
You know what? I think we're a hard-working team. I think we're a tough team. I think we're a team that can respond. You know, again, I told the team I was proud of them, because if you look at a lot of like the statistical stuff from last game, like if you told, if I polled you guys and I said, all right, the team loses the turnover margin 3-0, they give up 4 sacks, they don't get any sacks themselves, they lose the rushing battle 150 something to 70 something. You let a team score a touchdown every time they get in the red zone. You know, you have to kick a couple field goals when you're in the red zone. You know, if you said, all right, now predict the score of that game, you probably wouldn't say it's a 7-point game. You know, so I thought we battled to get it to 7 when we were outplayed. But I think we need to adopt the energy of continuing to improve. And I certainly think, you know, one thing that I think we may need to, you know, keep understanding is that when you become a good team, you know, I think we were proud to be 3-1. I think our fans were all proud to be 3-1, and they tell you how great you're doing. But that doesn't mean things get easier. It really gets harder. You know, teams are ready to go. I thought San Jose State played, you know, exceptional. You know, played you know, maybe their best game of the year. And you know, when you're a good team, I mean, and that's credit to Boise State. You know, they've been good for so long, and they've been that team that everyone gets up for and is ready to play again. So, you know, I think even the players mentioned to one of the coaches that, you know, hey, we maybe didn't have quite the same intensity of practice last week, and that showed up on Saturday. I mean, you can't make that up. You can't flip a switch on Saturday and get that back. So we got to have really a great week and continue to improve, because, you know, we got a long way to go. We got a lot we got to accomplish over these next 7 regular season games, and, you know, hopefully we'll have the opportunity to earn that 8th game.
You mentioned all the stats which you guys lost against San Jose State, but it's still a 7-point game. Part of that is your guys' fourth quarter performance. You guys have been probably the best fourth quarter team in the conference so far. How important is it to be able to, you know, continue to be great in the fourth quarter, but also get off to a faster start in the first quarter?
We got to get off to a faster start, and that's something we talked about yesterday. You know, we're going to change our practice format a little bit this week to try to incite that. But, you know, we've had 5 opening game drives and had 0 points. You know, and that's not the level we want to be at. That's something we got to improve on. And I do love, you know, the way we fought and not, you know, giving up on things. But you know, you look in 3 of our 5 games, you know, we've allowed the opposition to get a double-digit lead, you know, really in the first 20 minutes. And that's not a great recipe, you know, for success. And, you know, we didn't allow Idaho State to do that, but, you know, they had a lead in the fourth quarter on us. So, you know, we've built some deficits. Really, the only game that we kind of had the lead from the outset was UCLA, but even that game, you know, we had opportunities where we could have expanded the lead and we let them hang around. So I think we certainly got to start faster, and that's a point of emphasis this week.
Do you look at it as like a glass half full, glass half empty sort of thing, where you mentioned you guys fell behind in some of these games, but then you always find a way to make it competitive or come back and take over? So you have fight when you do have that fight.
Yeah, I'm. You know, here's what I look at it. I'm proud of our team that I think we don't give up. I'm proud of the team that I think we respond well to adversity. But we need to keep getting better. We need to just keep improving on our fundamentals. And I'd like to see, you know, just improvement on the Lobos. You know, Lobos beat the Lobos, you know, too much last week. You know, losing the turnover margin, having some costly penalties. You know, we had 2 explosive plays that were called back. One of them a touchdown, you know, on penalties. And there's some costly ones. You know, late in the game, we have 2 penalties in a row on the punt with, you know, whatever, 5-6 minutes left, and now we, you know, moving back 15 yards in that scenario, you know, we have an 80-yard drive then and get a field goal after giving up 15 yards of penalties. I mean, that, you know, whatever that is, that might be another minute at the end of the game. We have to get a stop and get the ball back. You know, not having to pick up those 15 yards, or maybe that's a touchdown instead of a field goal on that last drive, which adds to the, you know, momentum coming back. So we got a lot of stuff we got to improve on. We got to stay hungry to improve.
Before Sean goes, we're 3rd in plus minus for the fourth quarter. Ohio State and Memphis are the only 2 that have been fourth quarter plus minus.
Good company. After watching the tape, you know, I know you want to watch it back and all that. Obviously, what was your final read on Jack's performance?
I thought Jack's played pretty well. You know, I thought, you know, probably the first interception on the trick play, there's a little detail on the play that he's got to execute a little better that I thought didn't give the play as much misdirection as we would like to. But really, I think we got to coach that better. You know, that wasn't necessarily something that you just know randomly. You got to coach that up better. We went over it, you know, watched that clip with him and made sure we went over that. You know, I think the other two interceptions, the route runners have to help us. You know, I think there was a learning moment at the end of the first half. You know, when we had the ball with about 17 seconds, we probably want to operate a little quicker. You know, we had a play that probably didn't take a pure 10 seconds. You know, I think we got a first down, so they were moving the chains. The clock stopped at 17. I can't really tell on film exactly when we got it snapped, maybe like at 15. But we let that play go all the way down to 7 seconds, which kind of limited the plays that we could run. You know, that play we ran where we threw it to Dorian, that was a great execution by him, you know, kind of a perfect throw that Dorian almost came down with, but didn't. We were limited where we could really only read half the field. You know, if you had 4 more seconds, now you might tell him, hey, if you don't like it, you can scan across. So that was a learning moment, but I thought he played well. I mean, he certainly played well. You know, all three of the interception to Keegan, where he's getting hit by a guy that should be protected. And I also thought, you know, Keegan can, you know, we'll go over with him. He's got to be a little thinner on his route, which hopefully would put him in a position, even if he couldn't come down with it, to at least break it up and, you know, be the DB there on a one-on-one ball. So I thought he played well overall.
There were a handful of plays where it seemed like he was holding it maybe a little too long. Did you feel that he was actually holding it too long, or was this just stuff in the back end in terms of guys covering and guys need to get over?
Yeah, I think they covered pretty well. You know, I think there were times when, you know, when we get down, you're looking for some chunks and everything, and I think you might press a little bit more there. But, you know, I thought overall he didn't hold it too long.
Probably not going to face, actually I don't think you guys are going to face an offense like the spread and shred again this season and all that too. With that in mind, I mean, what do you kind of take from, you know, the defensive performance outside of we got to take, you know, we got to play better?
Yeah, I think we have to have better plans against teams like that, and I think that, you know, you look at, you know, we snuck a little bit of Air Force in the spring, you know, working against the option because it's different. You know, that might be an offense that we got to spend the day out in the spring, you know, just because it is different. And you know, I think it's one of two things. If you're going to play it differently than your base structure, which you're going to do against option teams, you might need to, you know, rep that more. You don't want to do that for the first time when you get into the season. Might be something you got to work on in the spring. And then number two, I think the question we got to keep asking ourselves is, you know, what is the best way? I mean, I do think our D-line is a good D-line. Is that the best way to play those guys, by taking a D-lineman, you know, off the field? And you know, I think we learned some things that were effective in that game, and I think certainly though that's something we got to make sure as a staff we're putting our players in the best situation to succeed.
The Boise State offensive line, Cage Casey, the center Randolph, matched up against the UNM guys, Keyshawn James, Newby, Lopez. What are some stuff that you've seen from the Boise State offensive line?
I think their line's good. I think their tackles are good. So I think this will be a great test for Keyshawn and our entire D-line. I think they're a physical D-line. They've had some injuries inside. You know, they played a little different center last week against Notre Dame, and there were times when you could tell he maybe didn't have the rhythm with the other guys that he'd like to have. But I've been impressed with their tackles. I think they protect well on the edge, and you know, they're a physical group.
In terms of, you know, you touched on some of the skill guys, the Boise offense and all that, the running backs in particular too. What have you just kind of seen out of that?
I think they're good. You know, Gaines, Riley, Sherrod. I mean, they do some creative stuff. I mean, they threw a little screen to Sherrod against Notre Dame that he takes off, and you know, he's got some great bursts. So, you know, they filled them, you know, nicely there. I know obviously they lost a great one with Genty, but I think they're good at back, and they've been able to get some great explosiveness in their running game. You know, except for those 2 games they haven't been as hot. So we had to do a good job. I still think it starts with the run. Matt Madsen's a very good quarterback. You know, I think it's you know, his game last week is probably a little bit like, you know, Jack's. You get behind, you're forced to throw it more than you really want to in your offense, and you end up turning the ball over more. I don't think that's typical, and I'd probably put that more on the game situation in Notre Dame than on him. I think he's a very good player, but I think just their offense has been built on, being a balanced offense and being to run the ball. I don't think their offense, just like very similar to us, they don't want to be one-dimensional and throw it all the time. We got to play more physical on both sides of the ball this week. I thought I was disappointed by our physicality last week. I thought, credit San Jose, I thought they out physical us in the game, and you lose a large percentage of the games when you get out physical.
With your history in Idaho, did you ever try and schedule, as head coach, did you ever try and schedule Boise? Did they schedule you?
I was interested in it. We were scheduling too far out. I mean, even if we did, I wouldn't have got to him. I saw, ironically, the Boise guy told me they just scheduled a series with Idaho State now. So, I think in-state rivalries are good. I think it's awesome for our state to have the New Mexico State game every year, even though we're in different conferences. And you see it a lot out west. Northern Arizona plays Arizona State every other year. And I just think those are neat games for the state, and that's kind of what I had proposed, because we were playing a Big Sky Mountain West matchups were happening every year between Boise and between Idaho and between Idaho State. So why not play each other and make it easier to travel and make it good for the fans and people in the state? So I'm happy for them. They're playing Idaho State. I think that's a good game.
Despite not playing, when you're in the same state and they're the big dog in football in Idaho, I get it. What did you see about their program that you admired, and kind of what did you learn about the program just being in the state?
Well, I've admired their program for a long time. I mean, in 1997, when I was a player at Wisconsin, they came out and almost beat us in Madison. And at that time, I don't think we knew anything about Boise State. We never heard of them. We probably didn't even know what state Boise was in 1997. But they quickly have garnered our attention. And when I was an assistant, we played them all 3 years. I was an assistant at Idaho in 4, 5, 6, and that when Hawkins was there, and then Chris Peterson, who I think is one of the best football coaches in my lifetime. And, just seeing what they've built, and then how they've continued to have that success, through a lot of different head coaches. I mean, I do think they're like the gold standard in Group of 5 football, and trying to do more and less. And really, to me, I think that's kind of like a model of what I want to try to build our program into. And I thought part of the thing that made this job attractive is I knew we'd only have to play them once, they're leaving, because they've been such a standard in our league. And then, them moving out, that kind of opens up the spot who can be the perennial power in this league going forward. So I've had a huge respect for them for a long time. Even before I went to Idaho as an assistant, and then from playing them, my first game as an assistant, that was my first game as like the O-line coach, and I think we lost 65-7. We were strong in the fourth quarter then, though. We scored the last 7. We were down 65-0. So, I remember that being a whirlwind that we just kept, we'd go 3 and out every time, and then they would score so fast, you're like trying to draw up an adjustment, and you have to get right out there. We played them a little tougher. Each year we played them a little tougher in 05 and 06. But, tremendous respect. They're a great program. Their fan base is amazing. They sell that place out every week, and that's kind of what I aspire to here, that hopefully we can have a crowd like New Mexico State, most games like they do every week.
A short week last week. I think you guys only did like 1 day in full pads, if even that. Do you feel that kind of played a little bit of role in the kind of the waning physicality you saw against San Jose State?
Possibly, but I mean, we had the same plan when we had against UCLA, and then we did a very good job there. I think no matter how you practice, what gear you practice in, I think the intensity you go about it, and just the intent is probably even more important than the gear. I mean, we will have, 2 practices in pads. This week we only had 1 last week, but again, we had a very similar deal to how we did UCLA. I don't think it's what we did as much as how we did it. We got to do it with a little bit more intensity and intent than we did last week.
And kind of transitive win over the preseason number 2 in the country. I think you have eyes on that game. Were you able to see it?
I do. I watched most of that game. It was a heck of a win. I was happy for UCLA, proud of them. Just great to see them fight through and improve. And that's what I told our team. Even though we're disappointed about how we played last week, I think that's a great example. I mean, clearly UCLA improved from when they played us. That shows you can make improvements during the year. And we got to do the same thing. We got to get a lot better here over the next few weeks, and hopefully all the way throughout the regular season.
Anything else? Oh, we have one. Yeah. That Wisconsin game, by the way, Wisconsin scored the 1 touchdown against Boise State on a 12-yard run with 49 seconds left. Yeah.
They blitzed the corner, and our quarterback did not see it, and their corner hit our quarterback in the back and missed the tackle. Our quarterback scrambled for a first down, 4th and 10 earlier in the drive.
So we're almost halfway through the regular season. Has the Royals lived up to your personal preseason expectations?
You know what? I really, as I looked at our preseason, like my thoughts for the year, I really didn't have like mid-season goals. You know, I kind of looked at the whole season of what we wanted to accomplish. So I'll say this: I don't think we're in a bad position to accomplish what I hope to do. Get to the postseason for the first time in a long time. But again, we didn't have any goals for halfway awards or anything like that. It's we want to finish this regular season and see where we're at. And sit back and evaluate.
My last question is just for the team as a whole, have they shown anything or surprised you in any way that obviously you're going to learn more about the team in 5? Have you learned anything about the team so far this year that is going into the season?
I don't really think so. Again, I got my ear pretty close to the ground, trying to look at all things. I do think that we've come together probably better and faster than I had hoped. And I think we're probably responding to adversity better than I had hoped. And I'm anxious to see how we practice today. This will be our first practice in pads. We just had a walkthrough last night since that last loss, and I'm optimistic to see how we respond. I think we'll respond well, but I think that's sometimes when you rebuild the program, the toughest thing is how do you respond to adversity, because it can be sometimes we expect bad things to happen because they happen bad in the past. So that'd probably be the biggest thing, but not a ton of surprises.
Coach, statistically, you and Boise State are remarkably similar in many categories offensively. You see points per game, 4 points against, really close, first downs, rushing attempts, touchdown passes. When you watch them play, and obviously knowing how your team plays, are you similar in reality? Has materialized?
I would say our offenses are similar. I think we're both teams that want to be multiple personnel groups. We want to mix in, use tight ends in our offense. We want to run the ball as kind of our starting point, and then play action and have things off of that. So I certainly see some similarities there. I think we're both 4-man fronts on defense. Again, I think their defense is probably a little bit more, experienced than ours, and I think we got to keep growing our defense to get on their level. But again, I do think they're kind of a model program. And, a lot of times you want to build your team to beat the best teams in your league. A lot of times they usually have a pretty good formula for winning the league.
Coach, thoughts on the balloon fiesta? Were you able to go?
We went Saturday night. That was the nice thing. We were playing on Friday, so my first time going over that. We saw where they kind of glow them up at night when it's getting dark. They'd fly up in the air when we were there. But, pretty awesome event. And just another great thing about Albuquerque. Some of our players have gone over this week. David Murphy, I saw him and his family go over, and then a few players who've been over this morning. So certainly an awesome deal to have that in the state, and proud to be part of it.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Perfect.